Welcome to the Golfish Podcast. I'm your host, Amy Goodman. We're changing things up for the rest of spring and summer and moving the podcast to release every other week. As always, we will continue to bring you fascinating interviews with the people behind the players of the PGA, LPGA, Champions Tour, and beyond. Don't forget to rate or leave a review and tell us how we're doing.
You've probably heard the hype, but have you ever actually considered incorporating CBD into your golf routine? If so, we're confident that our sponsors over at Joint Caddy will make you a CBD believer. Their signature roll-on freeze gel is perfect for any golfer who experiences aches, pains, or soreness on the course, and it comes in a no-mess applicator that eliminates any chance of greasy hands affecting your grip. Plus, it fits perfectly in your golf bag. They also carry their own blend of sublingual drops that will help you relax, or as they like to say, nip the yips. They're great for sleep too. All of Joint Caddy's products are all natural and free of any solvents, sweeteners, or preservatives. They even have the third-party test results listed right on their website. So head to jointcaddy.com and see what all the hype's about. And while you're there, use promo code GOLFISHJC20 to take 20% off any order.
This week, I'm excited to be chatting with Audrey Leishman. Audrey is the president of the Begin Again Foundation, mom to 3 amazing kids, and the wife to PGA Tour player Marc Leishman. During our conversation, we talk about the serendipitous way she met Marc, her near-death experience in 2015, and what life is like with Marc at home during the COVID pandemic, but also what it's like balancing life on the road. Talking to Audrey was such a light during this crazy and sometimes dark time we've been living in recently. I can't wait to visit her hometown of Virginia Beach and experience all the great food and attractions she talks about. If you'd like to get a behind-the-scenes look from one of the most genuine people you could meet, then this episode's for you. Let's get started. Hi, Amy from the Golfish Podcast. How are you?
How are you?
Good, good. Very excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for the patience. And I know I was kind of terrible about getting back to you.
Oh, gosh, no, not at all. 3 kids, a husband that's not normally home that much, a quarantine. There's a lot going on for you, I would imagine.
Yes.
It's a little bit calmer for me over here.
Seeing the kids, my daughter is napping. The boys, no, not to come in, but they might.
Hey, you know what? They're welcome to. They're always welcome to. So we'll kick this off because I know you have kind of a finite timeline of how long kids will stay kind of out of your hair and one will stay napping. So so today we have Audrey Leishman on with us. Audrey, tell us your connection to the golf world.
I am lucky enough to be married to Marc Leishman. We actually just celebrated our 10-year anniversary, but I actually met him before he was on tour. And I didn't know anything about golf from a birdie to a bogey, nothing. So it's been quite the learning curve over the years, but it's been good. It's been an adventure.
Yeah, I can imagine. How did you two meet?
We met at a bar in Williamsburg, Virginia. I went to William and Mary. It was a few years after I graduated, though. And we were just at the same bar. He was there Monday qualifying for a nationwide event, and he ended up not making that event, which worked in our favor because it meant we were able to spend some time together.
Yeah. I read an article that said that when you all started dating, you only got to see each other. It was either like 3 weeks out of 8 months or 3 times out of 8 months because he was traveling so much.
It was 3 weeks out of the 8 months. And it was pretty much a weekend here, a weekend there.
Jeez.
And we just made it work.
When
But,
10 years ago, that
it
was
prepared-
before like FaceTime and Skype were that big too. How did you guys make it work?
Just on the phone. And in the beginning, I actually found his accent to be difficult to understand on the phone. So I would have to make sure that I was sitting in a quiet room. There was no way that I could be running errands and talk to him on the phone or anything like that. Like, it had to be still and quiet for it to work for me.
He probably loved the undivided attention, though, let's be honest.
Yeah, it was, honestly, we met at a time where he really wasn't looking for anything serious. Just traveling to the U.S. and trying to get his tour card, and definitely did not expect to meet a girl at some random bar in Virginia who would end up becoming his wife.
Right.
But
right.
I really feel like it was meant to be. I mean, I was there when we met, I was actually working on the weekends. I worked with mentally ill adults, doing recreation with them. And I was in Virginia Beach. Williamsburg is about an hour away. And I had literally only gone up to Williamsburg for one night. I drove up Saturday night and had to be back at work Sunday afternoon.
Oh, wow.
So it was definitely meant to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so you all have been married together for 10 years, married for 10 years.
Married for 10 years.
Married for 10
We
years.
just celebrated our 10-year on the 24th.
Oh, congratulations. Yeah. That's very exciting. So what was life like in those early days before you had kids, maybe even before you got married? Did you travel with him?
I was actually kind of a unicorn as far as some of the girls are concerned. I did not stop working until we got married.
Oh, okay.
It was really, I enjoyed my job. And he was actually my first serious relationship. So I was very used to being independent on my own. I owned my own home. So I was financially and emotionally independent before I met him. And so it was really important to me to keep working until we got married. And honestly, when I did quit, it was such an adjustment. I really struggled with traveling and giving up, my own kind of world.
Yeah.
But, as you meet the other girls on tour and you develop friendships and you start to realize how special that life can be, it did become more enjoyable for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've heard that from a lot, from the handful of wives that we've chatted with, how that transition is a little bit challenging, but once you start meeting everyone else, it's like it just becomes your second family.
Yes, definitely.
So how did you, when you had your first, so you have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, when you had your first, and even your second, because they were decently close together, did the 4 of you travel before like the boys started school, or how did that work? How did you find like that balance with the kids?
Definitely. Mark is such a hands-on dad. He would not have been able to handle it if we hadn't been with him.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have done much for his golf game if he had to be away from us all the time.
Yeah.
So in those early days, we definitely tried to travel as much as we could. And over the years, you learn which events are more family friendly, which are your favorites. And so those are the ones that we still go to. But we traveled very consistently pretty much up until I got sick in 2015. And then after that, we had to kind of reevaluate what my health could really handle as far as traveling all the time.
So I definitely want to get to that, but I'd love for you to, because this is something that hasn't come up on the podcast before that I think is very interesting. So what makes an event family friendly for a player?
Well, part of it is the areas you're traveling to. If there are things to do with your family, for instance, everyone loves going to Bay Hill for the Arnold Palmer. There are so many theme parks around that you can go to. But the tournament itself also puts on a family party for us.
Oh, fun.
And it's held at the host hotel, and they go all out for us. Universal brings out characters, there's face painting, music, games. So it's just a lot of fun. The Players is another one that has a player family party for us. And then some of the tournaments that, I've loved, we've been able to stay on site. So the Valspar was one where we would all stay in Innisbrook, and the Greenbrier. I know the Greenbrier is canceled from now on, but that was one of my absolute favorites because we were all together, and Hawaii is like that as well. Many of us stay at the there are several that stay in Waikiki, but many of the ones with kids stay on site because it's so nice to be just there, be able to walk to childcare, walk to the golf course. So it's things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another interesting point. This actually came up with a caddy, not a wife, but the PGA Tour does support childcare for the players and their families. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, we are very, very fortunate. There is a staff of, I think there's 13 people on staff. They're not allowed to work more than 3 weeks in a row so that they always stay fresh.
Oh,
and
that's
to
nice.
support childcare, to support the childcare ratios, they supplement with volunteers from the community.
Oh, cool.
But
yeah.
most of the people that have been on staff have been there since Harvey was at his first tournament at 10 weeks old.
Oh my gosh.
So I've known them for many, many years. And of course there is some attrition, but most of that is actually due to marriage and having children.
Okay.
There aren't really many people who leave because they don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I bet.
It really is. That's like a whole nother family within the tour family.
Where was Harvey's first tournament?
Well, we travel. His first childcare, I think, was at Bay Hill, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's funny. Perfect time to take him out there and start getting him used to everything that was going to go on.
Yes, for sure.
So
and it's still one of our favorites.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have Harvey, Oliver, and Eva.
Yes.
So obviously Eva came post illness. Has she been on tour or traveled even close to the amount that maybe Harvey and Oliver have?
No, and that mainly is just because of the age of the boys and that they're in school. So we've cut back to, I think we go to maybe 7 tournaments out of every year.
Oh, okay.
So it's definitely not too much, but we try not to go more than 2 weeks apart. Any more than 2 weeks apart gets pretty difficult for Mark.
Yeah.
So if we're going more than that, it's usually when he has to go overseas.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. When Mark goes out, how many weeks on average will he play in a row?
So he actually tries not to play more than 2 in a row.
Oh, okay.
He's the kind of golfer, he plays much better when he's fresh. So if you actually look at his history and the tournaments he's won, it's always been on the first week out. He's never won one on his second week out.
Interesting.
So that's just a bit of random info for you. But he tends to play better when he's fresh. So he will occasionally play. Obviously, the playoffs are an exception, or if he is going overseas, he'll play more than that, but he tries to keep his schedule to 2 in a row.
That's incredible. I mean, it's so lucky for you and him and the kids to be able to continue to spend that much time together.
Definitely. And I'm also pretty blessed in that he is not obsessed with practicing. So his weeks off tend to be proper weeks off. He really likes spend his time at home and with the kids and mowing the lawn.
I was just about to say, I was like,
exaggeration. He loves to mow the lawn. So.
I love that there was like a semi-documentary of his like lawn care routine. That was so funny. And
he loves it.
You have to tell the story of like pulling up and your yard is on fire. A little bit of a shock to the system.
So, I mean, it was just a random weeknight, and I had gone out. I think his parents were here, and so I let them have some time, and I actually went out to dinner with a friend. And when I got back home, it was dark, and the lawn was on fire. Pretty obvious to see from the car that the lawn was on fire, and so I walked in, and they're sitting at the kitchen table, like nothing is going on. And so I actually felt a little crazy when I asked them, why is the lawn on fire? And yeah, so he does it once a year usually to get the top off of it. And he calls it his preparation, and the lawn usually does look really good. So, and people love to see him post about his lawn. Actually, on Instagram, his lawn posts tend to be the most well-liked posts, more than golf or anything else.
They are so entertaining. It was funny when you posted your Easter pictures and you said like everyone got dressed up. Like I almost commented like, I'm so confused. Mark has shoes on right now and he's on grass. Like, right. Does he know what he's wearing right now? Yeah. Because it always seems like he's like specifically walking around to like have that feel, which is so funny.
100%. Yeah. It's very, very rare for him to have shoes on if he is outside. Easter was actually a fairly cold day, so we were inside most of the day. But mainly I think he knew that I just wanted us to dress up somewhat for Easter. You know, it's a very obviously weird time, and who's bothering to get dressed every day?
Right.
And so it was just nice to feel like ourselves even for an hour or two.
Absolutely. I saw a post on Instagram today that one of my friends had shared on her stories, and it said that she's starting to feel dressed up when she goes from pajamas to yoga pants. I'm like, oh, yes, that's life right there. I'm like, oh, those were a lot of work to put on. I don't know about that.
You know, I will say, though, that the first few weeks of this quarantine, I was very much like that. But now I've realized that for my mental health, I have to get dressed and put on. I never wear a lot of makeup anyways, but I do strongly need concealer for these horrible dark circles that my children give me under my eyes. And so, you know, at least a few days a week, I try and get dressed and put on a little bit of makeup to just kind of feel like myself. And as much as I love my yoga pants, I've realized that it is equally important to me to put a little effort in a couple days a week.
Yeah, I completely understand that. So we're going on week 7 up here in Ohio. And the other day I blew dry my hair and had it down. My husband looks over and he's like, your hair's so long. I'm like, oh, you haven't seen it down in like 7 weeks. That's really terrible. I'm like, it has grown, I guess. But it is just those times where you're like, oh yeah, this is what normalcy is, and having that routine, because as we do start to come out of this, we're going to go back into these routines, and it's going to be challenging if we haven't had one in 2, 3, 4 months.
Definitely. I will say that is one thing that I feel like having kids helps with keeping somewhat of a routine. My boys are both having to do virtual learning at school. So, you know, we wake up and we do have a bit of a routine to follow with that. And Eva still naps, so that's a nice little break in the day that also kind of keeps us on a routine. So my personality, I thrive on routine. And so I have been trying to keep somewhat of a routine at home, but I mean, there are days when everyone is spending way too much time on their screens, and there are days when I throw my hands up and say whatever. Yeah. Whatever happens today happens.
That's all you can do some days. That's all you can do. You're doing everything you can. Oh yeah, and that's what we have right now. And like we're used to going outside and going on walks because it's been so nice out, and it's so dark and gloomy and gray right now that I'm like, oh, we're just going to be like inside. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
So you guys are in
no movie theater to go to.
No, exactly. So you guys are you in Virginia Beach?
We are.
Okay,
yes.
and you have family close and everything like that too, right? For your side?
Yes. So I grew up here since I was 4. My dad was in the Navy, and so he was stationed here, and luckily we were able to stay. So all of my immediate family is here. My parents actually live in the same neighborhood as us, which some people might be cringing over. But when I tell you my parents are the most respectful as far as time and space, I can't even stress that enough, how amazing they are with that.
It's a very Cincinnati thing for us too, so we completely understand.
Yeah, I mean, my dad, he'll pop over and he'll clean my litter box for me, and especially when Mark is out of town, he'll come over and make sure that the garage or the garbage cans are taken out so that I don't forget. And so it really, and it's so wonderful because, for the kids, obviously Mark's side of the family is so far away. Mm-hmm. So it is great that they're able to be here with their grandparents on one side and their uncles. So I have 2 older brothers who also live in the area.
How often, so Mark is from Australia, for those of you that didn't know, if you can't tell by his Instagram and his accent. How often do you guys get to see his family or go back to Australia?
So his parents usually come 2 to 3 times a year. Okay. And they usually come between 3 weeks to a month each time. And then, we try and get back to Australia once a year. This year everything is obviously up in the air, which has been a bit of a mental stress for all of us. Yeah. But his parents were actually here before everything went on lockdown. But when they flew back to Australia had closed borders. And so they actually had to spend 2 weeks in a quarantine in a Sydney hotel. They were not even given a hotel key. They were literally locked in their room.
What?
And so right now Australia borders are closed. And so we really don't know if they'll be able to come back over. If this 2-week quarantine is still in place, Mark isn't going to be able to go back. So, we're just all hoping that things improve enough that one or the other or both can happen.
I find it so interesting about Australia too, and I would assume you'd be able to educate me more on this, but they have strict quarantine for like pets and things that you're bringing in and stuff like that anyway with that country, which is fascinating to me because there are other island countries that don't have as strict of policies. I mean, has that helped during this time to keep their country safer?
I definitely think it couldn't hurt. You are correct. Definitely their customs. We always dread having to go through customs. Mm-hmm. One time Mark got caught because they've noticed like 2 or 3 pieces of grass on his golf shoes.
What?
So they are very, very strict. And so, I mean, obviously everything is showing that early precautions in countries have fared the best. And with them being strict already, it's not a huge problem over there, but they're still under these same stay-at-home orders that we are.
That's so interesting. I mean, I've always heard that because you hear about, and I mean, obviously you hear about this with famous people more than anyone else, but like they'll move over there and they'll bring their pets with them. And then it becomes this big thing because they don't want to quarantine their pet for X amount of time and stuff like that. So it's so, I mean, how did your in-laws cope with that? That is I mean, hotel rooms are not big. Like I just can't imagine essentially being in a studio apartment type thing, smaller than a studio apartment, and just sitting there for 2 weeks.
So they were lucky in that they got a room that had a balcony and they had a bathtub. And all of the Leishmans love to take baths. And so they were very, very happy that they had a bathtub. One thing, and I'm sure most people who meet Marc or even just watch him can tell that he's a pretty easygoing, laid-back guy.
Yeah.
Well, he gets that from his parents. I always kind of joke that Aussies in general are a pretty laid-back culture, but then there's the Leishman laid-back, which takes it another notch. So thankfully their personalities helped with them being able to get through it. But I mean, it was definitely a long, long 2 weeks for them.
Yeah.
But they kept their eye on the prize and they knew that they just had to get through it and then they got to go home.
Wow,
So they've been at home now for a couple weeks and they're good.
Yeah. That seems so crazy. I want to kind of transition to your activism with sepsis awareness, because I mean, when you think about it, you have kind of gone through some of these type of quarantine almost type things when you were in the hospital for an extended period of time. So tell us about how your passion for sepsis awareness started. And kind of what your medical journey was when everything happened back in 2015.
So, when I got sick, I was 31 years old, picture of health. My boys were 3 and 19 months. I was very used to doing the single mom thing a lot of the time. And when I thought I had the flu, I thought that's what it was. I had never heard of sepsis. And then I almost died from it. I do want to note that the other thing that really almost killed me was acute respiratory distress syndrome, or ARDS for short. And the people that are dying from the coronavirus right now are actually dying from ARDS. So that is when your lungs fill with fluid, the little alveoli, the sacs in your lungs, they fill with fluid, and it basically feels like you're drowning in your own body. And so I actually have been through what these coronavirus patients are dying from. And it is absolutely awful. It's the nightmare of my life. But when I was recovering from sepsis and the whole ordeal, and I started to learn about sepsis and the impact that it has and the death toll that it has every single year, I realized that so many lives could be saved, because one of the only positive things I guess I can say about sepsis is that it is very easily treatable. But the problem is most people don't know that it exists. They don't know that any infection can cause sepsis. And so, like me, they think they have the flu. And so they just kind of hang out and expect to sleep it off and rest and that they'll get better. And oftentimes when they get to the hospital, it's too late. And unfortunately, there are still too many instances of doctors and hospitals missing sepsis on triage. And so being able to advocate for yourself and or your child or your mother and say, could this be sepsis? And just asking those words could save your loved one's life or your own life, because then it will at least put that idea into the doctor's heads and they can look for the markers that they look for in the lab tests. And, if it is, early treatment will save your life.
When you have a blog and you've done a lot of interviews on this, and and you've gotten a lot of criticism, just like other women that have gotten sepsis from TSS, toxic shock syndrome, where they blame the female because that's what we were told for the longest time, right? So it's a lot of misinformation. But I think something that was so interesting that I read on, I believe it was your blog, if I remember correctly, was when your OB came to the hospital, they were very adamant that you did not have sepsis and that the diagnosis was incorrect, even though being treated specifically for sepsis saved your life.
So I will say toxic shock syndrome and sepsis are two different things. I had both. So I was the lucky
Yeah,
one.
you had a list, girl.
I did. And so toxic shock and one thing that people don't realize is that toxic shock can happen to men, women, and children. It's just a different bacteria to what sepsis is, but the symptoms are nearly identical. I have done a lot of awareness with women in regards to tampons and safer alternatives. I will say that the reason why I probably don't talk about that nearly as much as sepsis is because in my head, the symptoms are the same and sepsis is more prevalent than toxic shock. Mm-hmm. So if I can beat into people's brains sepsis, 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 even if it is toxic shock, just again, putting that idea into doctors' minds can save their life. But yeah, with me, I had my IUD removed. I used a tampon. I slept in it. 2 days later, I was sick. That being said, once I got to the hospital, I also had a UTI, strep throat, colitis, and pneumonia. Any of those things can cause sepsis. So I was just a very, very sick person, and I don't think anyone will ever be able to tell me what exactly it was that caused me to go into toxic shock. But regardless of that, it's the whole idea of when you know better, do better. And while I was recovering and learning about sepsis as well as toxic shock, I started looking more into feminine hygiene products for women and mm-hmm. how outdated they are and how no one lists the ingredients in tampons unless you're using organic cotton ones. Mm-hmm. And, if I can help educate women to make better choices for themselves or to at least be aware that toxic shock from tampons still happens. There's a really bad misbelief right now or belief that it doesn't happen anymore, that this was a problem that happened in the 80s. Since I got sick, I have met many survivors of women who had toxic shock from tampons. And unfortunately, I've met a few who have lost their daughters to it. Recently, there was a lady named Dawn who lost her daughter, Maddie, back in 2017. She was 19 years old, and she died from tampon-related toxic shock syndrome. So it's just really important for women to understand that it does happen. So if they are choosing to use these products, they can try and do it in the smartest way possible. And they can know that if they are starting to feel symptoms of toxic shock when they've used the tampon, they can get treatment right away.
Yeah, absolutely. I think your blog has an abundant amount of information on there. There are some things that I've started to hear a little bit more over the past couple of years, but there were other things that you still don't hear about at all that I think are very helpful to women out there to continue to educate themselves, because typically, and this is how I feel anyway, I don't feel like I always educate myself until something goes wrong for me. So if I hear it from someone else, I think hearing that story always helps for me to increase my general awareness of a topic like that.
Yeah.
You, so House, the show House is on like just a ridiculous like rerun right now, which is fantastic for me because it's always on in the background right now. But there was an article that you said you really liked House, and the diagnostic medicine and things like that. And, ARDS was actually on one of the episodes in the past couple of days. And I'm like, I know what that is now.
Yeah. And, honestly, now that you know about this stuff, if you watch any medical show, mm-hmm. you'll hear them talk about sepsis a lot.
Yeah.
And it was something that I didn't realize until I had gone through it and seen it. But the medical community is very well aware of these issues. It's the general public that mm-hmm. Needs to be more aware so that less people die.
Yeah, absolutely. So because of this, 2015, you were in a coma for five days?
Yes.
You were in a coma for 5 days. You come out on the other side. You are thriving again. You are able to have Eva, and you started a foundation. So do you want to tell us about the Begin Again Foundation?
Absolutely, yeah. So the first year after I got sick was very difficult. I was sick a lot. My immune system was so weak that I was catching everything. And again, I've said, I spent a lot of time researching and learning about what I had gone through and the sepsis. And it became really important to me to give back. And just as history, all of my jobs were in service of others. I worked with mentally ill adults, developmentally disabled adults. Then I ended up working for Social Security Disability. And so I've always had a heart for giving back. And in 2015, with Marc being selected for the President's Cup, we knew that we were going to have seed money from the President's Cup. And so that's allowed us to start the Begin Again Foundation. And one of the things that I learned about sepsis is how expensive the hospitalization can be. It's one of the most expensive. And I realized that there was really no financial support for survivors out there. And so we decided to create the Leish Line Financial Aid Fund, where we give survivors of sepsis, toxic shock, and ARDS $1,000 grants. And to date, we have given over 215 grants. And then we wanted to give back locally as well. So we support the Children's Hospital of King's Daughters, which is our local children's hospital. And when we were developing that program, I sat down with their development director and asked her, what is not being funded? What's fallen in the cracks? And so that's how we came to support their social work department. And we give the funds to the social workers, and we trust them to make the best decisions. And so we can do little things from providing bus passes. Imagine not being able to visit your child in the hospital because you don't have transportation. And sometimes we step in with bigger items. One of the stories that always stands out to me is that a child who had been discharged required equipment at home that required electricity. And when one of the hurricanes was about to come through, the parents reached out to the hospital, their social worker, and said, what are we going to do if we lose power? And so they used our funds to buy them a generator.
Oh, wow.
So it really varies. But one of the things that I love the most about that program is it's really tailored specifically to what will most benefit the family at the time. One of the saddest things I can think of is we once helped pay for a child's funeral costs. Which is not something you ever want to have to think about. But imagine losing your child and then not knowing how you're going to afford to give them a proper burial.
Right.
And so I feel really grateful that we can do this, and that we've had support to help us continue to fund our programs. And then our last local program is in regards to toxic shock syndrome. One day I was watching something and I learned that hygiene products are one of the most requested items for homeless women. But it's not something that a lot of people feel comfortable asking for. You don't see many drives for churches asking for pads.
Right.
And so we created our period planners, and we give them bags that have pads, wipes, and underwear. And the response from the local shelters has been really great, in that they've said, they really need this. And again, when it comes to education, one of my friends actually started driving around, and she keeps hygiene products in her car. And if she sees it, one time a homeless woman came and asked her if she had some money. And my friend said, yeah, I can give you a couple $. I also have some pads. And the girl was so thankful. And she goes, this is not something that anyone ever has. And it's something that I really need. And so to be able to support our community in that way has been really important to us.
It's so fascinating to me that we're in 2020. It's not 1920, right? And we still cannot talk about these topics, and that there aren't more fundraising drives, because it is impacting so many women in our population, and it's impacting girls younger and younger. So it's like there are so many people that have this need in schools, in homeless populations, things like that. And we're just not talking about it. It's so fascinating and heartbreaking at the same time that this kind of cycle continues.
It is. I will say that I feel encouraged in that I have noticed over the last couple of years that more people are taking on this issue.
Mm-hmm.
I know that our local junior league has started supporting schools with their own version of what we're doing. There is actually a national program called Period, and this is all they do is they work with local people to support the homeless populations with these products. So we're getting there.
Yeah,
it's taking a bit longer than I would like, but we've made progress, and I feel like it can get it can feel hopeless at times, but you have to look for the good. And so if you look, it's there, and people are starting to realize it's an issue and help.
Yeah, in Ohio, in the last 6 months, I think it just went into effect in the past, I want to say a month or two, but they just passed the pink tax. And so that was bringing a lot of local news coverage, talking about why any feminine products were taxed when there were male-based products that were not. So it definitely has been in the news a little bit more. I just hope that people continue to realize, when you're making a donation, maybe it's around Christmas or your birthday or some other holiday or something like that, that people continue to think about some of these things and just a different way to give back that other people may either not know about or not necessarily hear about.
Absolutely. Yeah. I always tell people to really do the research in who you're giving your money to. I mean, you work hard for your money, and you want to make sure that the value of your dollar is as strong as it can be in the charity that you're giving your money to. And I find that a lot of smaller charities make huge differences in their local communities and don't have the name and the fundraising power that a lot of bigger organizations do. And in that way, your money will go farther to actually directly helping people. And there are charities for every kind of cause that hits your heart. And there are smaller charities for every cause that can hit your heart. You just have to do a little bit of work to find them.
Yeah, absolutely. How can we either get involved or give back to your foundation?
We obviously always take donations, but one of our newer programs is our Sepsis Ambassadors program. And that is a way that people can volunteer to educate their community about sepsis. And obviously things are closed right now, but when they open back up, the whole idea of it is that you can talk about it at a work meeting, or, a lot of companies have lunch and learns, or your MOPS group, or your church group, or your tennis group, or whoever, is your circle. You can educate them about sepsis, and then who knows how that ripple effect, how many people you can reach through that education. So that's, a way to volunteer time. We actually also have a hygiene kit flyer if you wanted to host a drive and then donate those products to your local shelters. That's definitely a way. So those are two ways to do it without, being local. And if you don't want to give direct dollars. But one of the things that we do is if people donate money to us, let's say your family has been affected by sepsis and you really want those dollars to go towards helping other sepsis survivors, we do have that option to let us know where you want your money to go, which was important to me to be able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We'll make sure that we have all of this in the show notes, but also on our website so that people can find how to continue to engage with not only you and Marc, but with the Begin Again Foundation. I think what you guys are doing is very needed. It came out of an unfortunate dark spot, but I think you're kind of shining a light on what the other side can be if there's more awareness.
Thank you. Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's been a huge part of my recovery, and now it's become so much. It's not about me anymore, which is probably when that shift happened. That was when, one, I knew that I was better, and two, I knew that our foundation had its own legs, because it stopped being about me and it started being about the people that we've helped.
Yeah.
And that has been so important to me.
Absolutely. I think that's incredible. It is probably a paradigm shift, but a good one all the same.
Definitely.
So on a little bit of a lighter note, you all welcomed a new member to your family recently, and he got his name from kind of like what we were just talking about. Do you want to introduce your newest member?
Absolutely. So we just got a little Aussie Doodle, which is an Australian Shepherd Poodle mix. He is 8 weeks old, and we named him Doc. And we had gone through a lot of different names, but Doc was the one that kept coming back to me. Initially, we had thought about maybe even naming him after the doctor who had saved my life. But then when we thought more about just in the timing that we're getting him and all of the medical professionals that are putting their lives on their line to support our systems and support our patients, it just fit. And so we have our little Doc now, and he's fitting quite nicely in with the family.
He is the cutest little puppy. Oh my gosh. Are the kids just in love?
Oh my gosh, yes. So we have a 11-year-old Pekingese, and he has been with us since before we had the kids. And his name is Jasper. We love Jasper, but he's a little bit of an old man now.
They turned into that after a while.
Yeah, he doesn't really want to play with the kids too much anymore. And so they are ecstatic to have a little puppy that wants to play with them and wants to give them love. So he has just been a really bright light in what has been, some just challenging times.
Mm-hmm. How did Jasper handle the transition?
He's doing fine. Thankfully,
good.
Doc learned pretty quickly that Jasper isn't going to play with him.
Like, we can coexist, but you stay over there.
Pretty much. And so, and honestly, Jasper's probably getting more attention now than he was before because no one wants him to feel left out.
Aww.
So,
that's
it's working out really well. They just kind of they're stay to themselves, but then they get equal amounts of love. So it works out well.
Oh, that's incredible. Yes, everyone should follow Audrey on social media because her pictures of her family are adorable, but then she just peppers in these dog pictures, and I am just a sucker for any sort of dog picture. So that's definitely one of the first things you will see on her Instagram is Doc right now, which is just so stinking cute.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So what is, obviously we are still, right now we're recording this at the end of April. We are still under quarantine. We are hoping that, there will be events starting at the beginning of June. Whether those kind of happen or not, what does the rest of the year right now kind of look like for you and Marc and the kids?
Well, Mark is hoping that he'll be playing the Colonial in June.
Yeah.
Right now we are waiting really to hear what the tour guidelines are as far as families traveling.
Okay.
If the tour doesn't really feel like it is safe for us to be there, then we won't go.
Okay.
But right now, the Travelers is on our schedule to go to, as well as Memphis over the summer. And the playoff events, we would go to Northern Trust and the BMW. We're really hoping that we can go, but we, of course, understand that everyone's safety is, of the most important. So we'll listen to what the tour guidelines are.
Yeah. Because so when they talk about no spectators, does that mean right now no family members too?
So we don't know.
Okay. Okay.
Those decisions haven't been made yet. And I know that everything is evolving right now.
Right.
I think we hear the word fluid situation every day. So yeah, we're just, thankfully, we don't have to know right now, but hopefully they'll be able to make some good decisions in the next few weeks, and we can plan accordingly. But Mark is just really looking forward to getting back out on a golf course and competing again. Right before everything shut down, he was playing some really good golf. So hopefully he can go back to doing that.
Are golf courses open around you?
They are. Those courses are open, no carts, from what I understand. And obviously the dining rooms are closed to in-room dining, but he's actually playing golf right now.
Oh, good. Glad he's out there.
He didn't play much the first couple of weeks, and then realized that one, he needed to for his game, but two, it's good for him mentally to get out and get some fresh air and do what he loves to do. He definitely wants to try and stay, game ready.
When he goes out, I know you don't play golf, but do you ever go out on the course with him?
Not to
like
know.
If he's practicing. You're like, no. Thanks. Does he say, do people come up to him? Does everyone recognize him when he's out there?
Yes.
Yeah.
We actually we were very lucky in that, he flew under the radar for a really, really long time. And so we had a good couple years of him being on tour without too much, but it's not even a problem. It's a good thing when you've played good enough golf that people recognize you on a golf course. So, but I will say that last year it was really funny. We at the Travelers, which is actually one of our favorite events. I didn't mention that one earlier, but the Travelers does an amazing job for their families. But we were there, and our oldest son, Harvey, loves frogs. And there is one hole on that golf course that there's a pond around the green, and there are frogs everywhere. And I'm talking about huge frogs. And so we went out there one night after play was done to look at the frogs. And Mark was walking around the golf course, and he was just in normal clothes, and he actually was only recognized once. So, there are some benefits to still being fairly, low key on the spectrum. So yeah, that was a really interesting thing to see.
Yeah, you can actually go out and enjoy dinner without a swarm of people around you, or people what are they eating? What are they doing? Let's take a picture. Let's put it on social media. We saw Mark and Audrey.
Yeah.
Well, Audrey, this has been so much fun. I am so excited to share this with our listeners. I would love to wrap up by playing a quick 9 with you if you are ready.
Definitely.
All right, perfect. What are the must-visit attractions in Virginia Beach?
The ocean front, for sure. And, if you drive to Norfolk, which is about 20 minutes away, the Norfolk Naval Base is there, and you can tour the USS Wisconsin, which is really cool. And then there's just a lot of really good food around, but I'm not going to take up a bunch of time by naming restaurants. But if anyone wants some good food recommendations, message me.
Well, I'm a big NCIS fan and seafood fan, so we're definitely going to have to make it up to Norfolk to check that out.
Sure.
What is your favorite book or type of books to read?
My all-time favorite book is Tuesdays with Morrie
So
by
good.
Mitch Albom. It's the only book I've ever read more than once, and it's also the only book that I will recommend to anyone and feel 100% confident that it will change their life. And other than that, I really like feel-good books, and I need books that catch me in the beginning. I'm a pretty avid reader, but I am not a patient reader, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yes,
I need to be drawn in quickly.
Yes.
So.
If you could live anywhere on Earth, where would it be?
Probably Virginia Beach, just with my family being here. Family and my close friends are the most important thing. But if I had to live somewhere else, it would either be Australia or Hawaii.
Both good places to visit.
Yes.
What was your first job?
I worked so in high school, I was kind of a nerd, and I was student body president, and I was involved in our citywide, it was called Citywide SEA, which stands for Student Cooperative Association. And I'm sorry, this is not a quick answer.
That's okay.
Every year they put on this leadership workshop, which was very influential for me when I was in high school. And so when I graduated, I went onto staff for the leadership workshop. And so that was my first job, and it was a really great first job to have.
Oh, that's so cool. Yes, when you say you have been giving back and volunteering and it's in your blood, you can definitely tell like how far back it goes.
Yeah, it's important to me for sure.
Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Early bird, about 9:00 is starting to get too late for me. So.
What time do you get up?
Usually between 6:30 to 7.
Okay. All right. So that's legit. Like I can understand
That's
9:00
not too
then.
early.
No,
I
no.
really like my sleep. So.
And now that the kids will sleep through the night, take it from what I hear.
Yes, for sure. Although we have a puppy who is not.
Yeah,
sleeping
that
through
does
the
not
night
understand
just
that.
yet.
Yeah.
So.
We have a Yorkie, and he did not understand the concept of sleeping through the night until he was about 8. So I understand. I just kept looking at him like, you're supposed to be old and sleeping now. What are you doing? Like, we don't have to get up at 5. It's Saturday. I know weekends don't mean anything to you, but they mean something to me.
Yes.
What's your favorite season?
Oh, it's a tie between fall and spring, but maybe leaning towards fall. Just I have a fall birthday. Marc is actually a fall birthday as well, and I really love the leaves changing color and how the trees look like they're on fire.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely love it.
Absolutely, I completely agree. Do you prefer a beach, lake, or mountain vacation?
Beach. Unless it's at the Greenbrier. I would say beach or the Greenbrier. The Greenbrier is one of my favorite places in the world.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I have not been there. I have heard great things. So I know that the tour has canceled their event there, but we can still go. So we'll add that to our list too.
Definitely. It's worth a vacation for sure.
So I am about to be a new mom. First baby on the way. At the end, thank you. At the end of May. So I figured since you have 3 kids and they are all thriving and adorable and looking perfect all the time, I'd love to know your best advice for a new mom. This is a very selfish question.
Oh gosh. The best advice, listen to your gut. There are so many experts out there and everyone is going to tell you a completely different thing. So listen to your gut, to what feels right for you and your baby and your family, And then the other part of that would be to try and find people that you do trust to give you advice that would, knowing you, would work for you and your baby, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You're going to find moms who sleep train, and you're going to find moms that co-sleep. And you're going to find your camp, and those are the ones that you're going to want to maybe. It's always good to get different perspectives, but trying to not place that pressure on yourself to do something that doesn't feel comfortable for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it'll be really interesting because he is supposed to be here at the end of May, and there's just, everything is so different. So like the advice I'm getting right now, I mean, even from doctors or friends or anything, they're like, well, I mean, this is what we did, and this is how long we waited for the baby to meet people, but you're just in a different world. I'm like, oh, thanks. Someone will meet the baby when he's walking. It'll be fine.
Well, thank goodness for FaceTime.
I know. Seriously. And then last question, what is your drink of choice?
Oh, gosh. I like sweet, fruity drinks. I'm very much a girly drink kind of person.
You like some umbrellas?
Love a good sangria. Yeah, I do love my little umbrella.
There's nothing wrong with that. Especially with going with your beach vacation theme. I like it.
Exactly. But I am not a big drinker, honestly. I drink about 100 ounces of water a day and have a drink maybe once a week. Although this quarantine has kind of changed things for me.
I think it's changed things for a lot of people, so I think everyone understands. You'll be back to it before you know it. Well, Audrey, like I said, this has been an absolute pleasure. I had a fantastic time with you. Where can we continue the conversation online and follow yours and Marc's adventures and the Begin Again Foundation?
Well, thank you for having me. We are both active on Instagram. That's probably the easiest way to follow our adventures. Marc is just Marc Leish, and I'm Audrey Leishman. It's pretty simple. I do have a blog. I'm not too active on that anymore. And then also Begin Again Foundation. If you follow us on social media, and engage with us, that helps us out so much because awareness is such a huge part of what we do. It's not so much about the followers, but every follower represents a person that can learn from the education we're putting out there and then share that knowledge with other people. That is truly what's so important to me.
Absolutely. And like I mentioned, we will make sure that all of this is in the show notes so that everyone can find it very easily. Audrey, again, thank you so much. We hope that everything goes well and Marc is back out on tour in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And we will look forward to seeing some incredible first week golf. Maybe this is the time that he'll get his second week win. He'll just throw everybody off and all of his stats off.
Well, thank you so much, Amy.
Absolutely. You have a wonderful week and go enjoy those kiddos.
All right. Thanks.
Bye-bye. Bye. Thanks for joining me today. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a minute of the action. See you soon.